Hello, and welcome to this module on AngularJS services. My name is Jim Cooper, and in this module we'll be talking about how to create custom services in Angular and how to use the built-in services that come with Angular. So first of all, what do we mean when we refer to a service? The term service is an overloaded term. Sometimes when people use the term service, they're referring to an over-the-wire service such as a web service or a WCF service. Or sometimes they just mean simply an object that is used to encapsulate some sort of business logic, or just does some sort of work for us. With respect to Angular, a service refers to the latter description. A service is just a worker object that performs some sort of business logic. It is not accessed over the wire, although it may be used to perform operations that do go over the wire, such as making AJAX calls. Also, services are often stateless, although it isn't unusual for a service to cache data that is accessed frequently. So when we talk about services in this module, know that we aren't talking about anything special, just an object that has methods and properties on it that we can reuse. Angular ships with a whole host of built-in services that are useful for working with Angular. These services make it possible to handle things like navigation, AJAX interactions, and a whole host of other common tasks. But Angular also makes it easy to create your own services, and almost any application you create with Angular will necessitate creating your own services. This module will dig into creating your own services as well as utilizing the built-in Angular services. So why would we want to use services anyhow? Services allow you to encapsulate reusable business logic into an object that can be shared and reused throughout your application. So reusability is one reason. And it also allows you to break your application down into pieces that are easier to maintain. You could put all of your logic inside a controller, but that becomes difficult to manage as your system grows and it violates the single responsibility principle. The single responsibility principle is one of the 5 solid principles of object-oriented design, and it states that an object should only have a single responsibility. If you'd like to learn more about Solid, Wikipedia has a nice write-up here. Another reason to use services is that you can then inject them into your controllers and other services that need them. This allows you to have access to the functionality that you need when you need it. Angular behaves like a fully featured dependency injection container, which makes it easy for it to get access to the services that you need when you need them. And finally, using services makes it easier to test your code, because you can isolate your test to just the pieces of code that you're trying to test. This is thanks to dependency injection again, because when I'm testing a piece of code, I can inject any services that it needs, and instead of injecting the real services, inject mocks in its place. AngularJS was actually built from the ground up to be testable, and services are one of the things that have made that possible. An AngularJS service, whether it's built-in or custom, is really just like the services that we just talked about. It's just a simple worker object, and you create it just like any other object, except that when you create an object intended to be used as a service, Angular is unaware of its existence until you register that service with Angular. Registering a service with Angular is simple, and once registered, it now becomes part of the Angular world and can be used like any other Angular service. It can now be easily injected into your controllers and directives and filters and even into other services. This really is all it takes to create a custom service in AngularJS. So let's have a quick review. True or false? In Angular, the term service refers to an over-the-network service, like a RESTful web service. This is false because an Angular service is not over the network. It's just a local client object, and it may do things like make over-the-network calls to a RESTful service via AJAX, but it doesn't necessarily do that. Why do we need services? Well, there's a whole host of reasons, but some of the ones that we talked about are services are reusable, so that you can reuse them throughout your application. It helps you to write code that adheres to the single responsibility principle, and it helps with testability due to dependency injection. Last question, how is an Angular service different than any other service? It really isn't different except for the fact that it's registered with Angular so that Angular can inject it whenever it's needed.